Please make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. It's funny how the smallest decisions can lead to the biggest moments of our lives. That morning, my wallet was thin, my soul even thinner. The rain had soaked through my worn shoes, and I was late for my third job, cleaning houses in the wealthiest neighborhood of the city. I was barely holding things together for my son and me. Still, when I saw him, standing alone at the back of the line for the bus, pockets turned inside out, his shoulders slumped like he'd lost everything, I didn't hesitate. "Here," I said, offering the last crumpled note from my purse. Nobody deserves to be left behind. He didn't thank me right away. He just looked at me, like he recognized something I didn't even know I carried. A storm passed in his eyes. Then he nodded slowly and got on the bus. I didn't know then that I'd just paid the fare. For a man who could have bought the entire bus company. And I had no idea what that one gesture would bring into my life. It was one of those mornings that make you question every life decision you've ever made. The kind where the clouds look heavy enough to fall and crush you, and all you can hear is the slush of your soaked feet in shoes you can't afford to replace. I was late. Again. Late to the Simmons mansion. And they didn't tolerate lateness, not from the help, as Mrs. Simmons so lovingly called me. But as I approached the crowded bus stop, I saw him. A man in a tattered coat, standing alone. Soaked. No umbrella. Everyone avoided him like he carried disease or bad luck. His hands were shaking as he patted his pockets, coming up empty. He looked defeated. I know that look. I've seen it in my own mirror far too often. The bus rumbled down the hill, its headlights blinding. People began to shift forward. I had exactly $1 left in my purse, just enough for one person. But something in me just broke. I stepped toward him and handed him the fare. "Get on," I said softly. "You can't stay out here like this." His eyes lifted to mine. I expected pride, or shame, or maybe even refusal. But instead, there was something else, stillness. Like I'd just done something far more significant than I could ever know. "I'll pay you back," he said quietly. "No need," I replied, brushing it off. "Just help someone else someday." We rode the entire trip in silence. I got off 3 stops later and ran through the gates of the Simmons estate, drenched and trembling. But something in me felt different. Like I had just rerouted the universe, even if I didn't know how. It would take 3 days before I saw him again. And by then, everything would change. 3 days passed. I didn't think much of the man on the bus after that. I assumed he was just another soul down on his luck, like so many of us in this city. Life moved on, and so did I, barely. Cleaning silverware that cost more than my rent, scrubbing marble floors that would never know the calluses on my hands. Every day at the Simmons mansion was a quiet war against my pride. Then he showed up again. But not where I expected. I was dusting the grand staircase when the front door opened, and Mr. Simmons, usually short-tempered and impatient, practically bowed as he let a man walk past. "Mr. Blackwell, it's an honor," he said, his voice sugar-slick. "We've followed your investments for years. My wife is quite a fan." I paused mid-swipe. "Blackwell." I turned slightly, eyes low as usual, pretending to focus on a decorative vase. But when I looked up, my breath caught in my throat. It was him. The man from the bus. Gone was the tattered coat. In its place was a tailored charcoal suit that whispered money. His shoes, polished Italian leather. His demeanor. calm, controlled, dangerous, in that way powerful men are. But his eyes, they were the same. Our eyes met for 1 second, just one, and I knew he recognized me. But he said nothing. He simply walked past me with a slight nod, while Mr. Simmons led him into the sitting room like a lapdog. I stood frozen, duster in hand, heart thundering. Later, I found out through hushed whispers in the kitchen that he was Darren Blackwell, a billionaire investor from New York who had come to discuss business with Mr. Simmons. But I knew something wasn't adding up. Why hadn't he said anything? Why was he pretending not to know me? And more importantly, why did he come here? It wasn't just business. I felt it in my gut. The next day, he returned. And this time, as I was bringing in a tray of drinks to the study, he looked straight at me and said, "Miss, would you mind bringing the tea to the guest house instead? I think we'd prefer privacy." Mr. Simmons hesitated but nodded. I followed Mr. Blackwell out through the garden path, hands shaking on the tray. Once inside the guest house, he shut the door gently and turned to face me. "You," he said softly. "You gave me your last few dollars. And you had no idea who I was." My throat tightened. "I didn't do it for thanks." "I know," he said, taking a seat. "That's exactly why I'm here." I stood there, tray trembling in my hands. The guest house was quiet, luxurious in a subtle way, all earth tones and leather finishes. But the man sitting in front of me made the air feel heavier than the velvet curtains drawn around us. He leaned forward, steepling his fingers. "What's your name?" "Jasmine," I said, barely above a whisper. He smiled slightly. "Jasmine, I haven't forgotten what you did for me that day. You gave me kindness when the world gave me nothing. That doesn't go unnoticed in my world." I blinked, trying to keep the confusion from showing on my face. "I didn't do anything special." He shook his head. "You have no idea how rare that is." He stood up and walked toward the window, looking out toward the Simmons grand estate. "You know what they say about power," he said. "It doesn't change who you are. It reveals it." Then he turned to me. "I've spent years surrounded by the rich, the greedy, the plastic. And I've learned to read people. Jasmine, I don't just remember you. I need someone like you." I didn't understand. "Need me for what?" He walked back over slowly. "I'm not here for business." "Not really. The Simmons think I'm going to invest in their real estate venture, but I'm not. I'm here because I had my team look into you." My heart dropped. "You, what?" "I don't mean to frighten you," he said quickly. "But I had to know who you were. You work here, cleaning their house while putting your sister through school and caring for your sick mother. You haven't missed a single shift in 8 months. You take the same bus. Sit in the same seat. You live quietly, honestly, and humbly." He stepped closer. "I want to offer you a job. A real one." I shook my head slowly. "What kind of job?" His gaze didn't flinch. "I'm starting something new. A foundation. For people like you. I need someone to run the operations on the ground. Hire staff. Oversee programs. Handle real lives with real problems. I need someone I trust." My voice was barely audible. "Why me?" He smiled. "Because you've lived it. And because the world needs to see that women like you belong at the top. Not scrubbing floors for people who never look you in the eye. Tears welled in my eyes, but I blinked them back. And if I say no? He nodded. Then I leave quietly. No strings. No pressure. You never hear from me again. My hands clenched the tray. My entire life, no one had offered me anything without expecting something in return. This felt too big. Too surreal. What's the catch? He chuckled. There is none. Just one condition. I swallowed. What is it? His smile faded. He looked me dead in the eye. You'll have to walk out of this house today. And never come back. I stood outside the Simmons estate, the afternoon sun burning hot against my skin, but not half as hot as the fire raging in my chest. I hadn't said yes. I hadn't said no. I'd done the unthinkable instead. I'd walked out. No explanation. No goodbye. Just silence, my apron balled up in my fist, and my heart pounding in my ears as the mansion door shut behind me, forever. I didn't even take the usual bus. I just walked. Miles. Thinking. Doubting. Remembering. Everything the billionaire stranger, Daniel Weston, said rang louder with each step. You'll have to walk out of this house today. And never come back. The Simmons place had been a prison with chandeliers, and I had just found the key. But keys unlock and lock. And freedom. It's heavier than chains when you've been trained to survive on scraps. That night, I got a call. Unknown number. I answered with shaky fingers. I knew you'd leave, he said simply. I didn't speak. Are you ready? He asked. Still, I said nothing. Then he added something I wasn't prepared for. I already made arrangements for your mother's treatment. Private care. Best in the state. Check your email. I gasped. You, what? Why would you? Because time matters. And I don't want your yes to be based on fear. I want it to be because you're ready to become everything they tried to bury. My knees buckled, and I sank to the floor of my small room. For once, someone had seen me, and not as the help, not as background noise, but as something more. The next day, a sleek black car pulled up in front of our duplex. Not a limo, something quieter, more respectful. I expected to be driven to some corporate tower or fancy office, but instead, we stopped at a cafe. He was already seated inside, in jeans and a dark grey button-down, no bodyguards, no entourage, just him, 2 coffees, and an open laptop. I slid into the seat, wary. Why here? Daniel looked up with a soft grin. Because I wanted this to feel like the beginning of something normal. Something yours. He turned the screen toward me. It was a proposal. A full business plan. Budget. Goals. My name was already typed in under Director of Outreach and Program Design. My mouth went dry. This is real. Very. I scanned the figures. Salaries. Benefits. A company card. Staff listings. A calendar already being filled with projects in low-income communities. He leaned in. You once gave me a few naira and a seat beside you. The world thought I was a bum. You never even asked my name. You just shared your umbrella and gave me dignity. I blinked. The memory was starting to feel like another life. Daniel Weston, the billionaire with a social justice mission, was real. And he wanted me, not just on his team, but beside him. Then he paused, and added gently, "But I need to tell you something else." I looked up, eyebrows raised. He took a breath. "The Simmons know who I am. And now, they know who you are too. They're not done with you." I stared at Daniel. His words rang like a slow echo in my mind. "The Simmons know who I am. And now, they know who you are too." I should have been afraid. But fear didn't feel the same anymore, not after walking out of that mansion, not after reclaiming my voice. Still, I had to ask. "How do they know?" Daniel sighed and leaned back in his chair. "After I left the gala, I made some inquiries. I wanted to know everything, your name, your background. But I wasn't the only one looking into you." My stomach turned. "They ran a check on you, too. Found out where you lived, your family situation, and then they found me. Or rather, who I really am." I could already picture Patience Simmons' face twisting in cold satisfaction, and Mr. Simmons' smug chuckle. To them, I was just a former maid who got lucky. A problem to erase before it grew bigger. "What are they going to do?" I asked, my voice low. Daniel looked me dead in the eye. "They've already started. Your former co-workers. Fired. Told not to speak to you again. The media. They've tried to buy off one of my reporters to dig up dirt on you." My jaw clenched. "But there's nothing." "They think there is," he interrupted gently. "And the truth is, Jasmine, they're not just protecting their reputation. They're protecting a secret." My heart skipped. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were documents, transcripts, emails, hidden HR complaints, all buried beneath polished PR. "This," Daniel said, "is proof of what they've done to women like you. Women they used, discarded, degraded." I didn't want to cry, but the tears came anyway. Quiet, controlled. I'd scrubbed their floors. Picked up their children's toys. Laughed politely when Mr. Simmons made inappropriate jokes. Pretended not to hear when Patience whispered about me in French. I was just the help. The background. The disposable. But not anymore. Daniel leaned forward. "They want a war." I nodded slowly, eyes blazing. "Then let's give them one." The press conference happened 3 days later. I stood beside Daniel in a pale cream blouse and wide-leg navy trousers. No apron. No badge. No silence. The room was packed. Cameras. Microphones. Curious faces. I took the podium. "My name is Jasmine Nwako," I began. "And for 3 years, I worked as a domestic assistant for the Simmons family. I was overworked, underpaid, humiliated, and ignored. But I stayed silent, until now." I paused. "The woman you called invisible, is now visible." I detailed everything. The verbal abuse. The withheld pay. The way Patience once locked me out in the rain for being too slow. The lecherous glances from Mr. Simmons. The day I found their daughter crying in a closet because of how her mother treated the help. And finally, I pointed to Daniel. The man they mistook for a vagrant is one of the most powerful business leaders in the country. And he's not just my partner, he's my witness. Daniel stepped up, his voice sharp, commanding. "We've filed a lawsuit. Not just on Jasmine's behalf, but on behalf of every worker silenced by wealth, race, and power." Gasps. Flashes. Murmurs. And then, something I didn't expect. Applause. Not polite. Not brief. A rising, thundering wave of people clapping, for me. That night, I returned home to find an envelope under my door. No name. No address. Just a single word written across the front in gold ink. Enough. Inside was a letter. No signature. You were never meant to speak. Stay quiet, girl. You don't know what you're starting. I closed the envelope calmly, tossed it into the flames of my candle, and whispered. I haven't even begun. You'd think the hardest part was over after speaking out, after standing before cameras and calling out the powerful. But what they don't tell you is that silence has teeth, and when it breaks, the bite is sharp, relentless, and often, personal. It started at midnight. I was still up, going through the next day's legal files when my phone buzzed. No caller ID. I almost let it ring out, but some gut-wrenching pull, made me answer. I put it to my ear and said, hello. There was silence. Then came a single word, whispered, almost like wind. Run. The line cut. My fingers tightened around the phone. I froze, heartbeat slamming against my chest like it wanted out. I thought of calling Daniel. I thought of calling the police. But I didn't move. Then came the knock. 3 slow taps at my front door. I tiptoed across the room, every creak in the wood floor sounding like thunder. I peeked through the peephole. Nothing. But taped to my door was a small black envelope, thick paper, gold wax seal. The same handwriting from the first letter. I brought it in carefully, not opening it until I was sitting, grounded, armed with logic I no longer believed. I unfolded it. Inside, a photo. A picture of me. Outside the courthouse. Standing beside Daniel. But it had been slashed diagonally, and scrawled in red marker across my chest were the words. We warned you. I stared. I didn't shake. I didn't cry. But deep inside, the echo of an old voice whispered. This is how they end you. Quietly. Not with noise, but with fear. I spent the night watching shadows move across my living room wall. By morning, Daniel was at my door, jaw clenched, rage sitting behind his eyes. I know, I said before he could speak. He handed me his phone. It was a security footage still. A man in a hoodie, face half concealed, slipping something into his car's gas tank. We found it before it exploded, Daniel said grimly. My mouth went dry. They're not playing anymore, he added. This isn't reputation protection. This is silencing. And it's bigger than the Simmons. I looked at him, voice hoarse. Then who is it? He slid a folder toward me. The names you mentioned in your speech, the workers, the other victims. You stirred something up. This is connected to a network of cover-ups. Decades long. Organized. Funded. I swallowed hard. I'm in danger, I whispered. Daniel looked me dead in the eyes. You're not alone. But you have a choice. Either step back, or step forward. That night, I chose. I recorded a video. Raw. Unpolished. No makeup. No script. Just me. I looked straight into the camera and said, they told me to run. They told me to stay silent. They tried to scare me. But I won't stop. Not until every voice they've silenced is heard. The video went viral in hours. Celebrities reposted it. Activists. Other survivors. And soon, others started speaking. Former nannies. Drivers. Gardeners. Black women. Brown men. Immigrants. Mothers. All with one thing in common. They'd all been used and discarded. But the real storm hit 2 days later. A woman in her 70s came forward, Eleanor Weston, a former housekeeper for the Simmons, and Patience's childhood nanny. In a trembling voice, she said on national television, "Jasmine is telling the truth. And I've waited 50 years for someone brave enough to say it." My name was now everywhere. In the news. On hashtags. #JusticeForJasmine. #She spoke anyway. #They tried to silence her. But attention came with a cost. Because on the third night, I walked into my apartment to find it trashed. Drawers pulled. Books torn. The smell of gasoline lingering in the air. On the mirror, written in red, "Next time, we won't miss." I called Daniel. But before he answered, my phone buzzed again. A new number. One I recognized immediately. My little sister's. Only, she wasn't calling. It was a live video. And on screen, was her. Bound. Crying. And behind her, Patience Simmons. Holding a lighter. Smiling. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stared at the screen, at the flickering image of my baby sister tied to a chair, her mouth gagged, her tears cutting thin rivers down her cheeks. And behind her, Patience Simmons. Calm. Polished. Poised like this was just another photo op. She held a silver Zippo lighter in her hand, flicking the flame on and off as if it was some twisted metronome counting down my sister's seconds. "Hello, Jasmine," she said into the camera, her voice syrupy and cold. "You always did underestimate how far I'd go." I couldn't speak. My breath caught in my chest. The phone trembled in my grip. "I warned you," she continued, brushing a lock of hair from my sister's face with a disturbingly tender gesture. "But you chose the spotlight. You chose war. And in war, casualties are expected." Then the video cut off. Black screen. Silence. And then a text message appeared. "You have until midnight. Come alone. No police. Or the flame finds her." p. 11:02 p.m. I was in my car, hands gripping the wheel, eyes locked on the coordinates she sent. A deserted warehouse near the river docks, the kind of place you only see in movies or nightmares. Daniel had begged me not to go alone. But this wasn't about bravery. This was blood. I would not let my sister burn because of me. As I drove, my mind raced through 100 memories, us as kids, braiding each other's hair, whispering secrets under blankets, our mother's funeral when she clung to me like I was her last safe place in the world. I couldn't lose her. Not to Patience. Not to fire. 11:46 p.m. I arrived. Alone. The warehouse loomed like a forgotten cathedral, all rusted metal and broken glass. A single light flickered near the entrance. I walked in slow. The door creaked open, revealing the full horror. My sister, Elena, still bound to the chair. A ring of gasoline soaked into the concrete around her. A red jerrycan nearby. And Patience, standing over her like an executioner in designer heels. "Right on time," she smiled. "I'm here," I said, voice steady. "Let her go." She clicked her tongue. "You really think this is just about her?" I kept my eyes on Elena. "This is between us, Patience. You and me." She walked toward me slowly, like a cat circling its prey. "You don't get it, do you?" she hissed. "You broke the rules. You exposed the families. The deals. The entire structure our legacies were built on." She pulled out a gun. I didn't flinch. "I knew your mother," she whispered suddenly. "Back when she cleaned our floors. You think she was innocent? She stole. She blackmailed. She seduced one of the board members. That's how you were born, Jasmine. You're not just a maid's daughter." She leaned in, lips near my ear. "You're my half-sister." The floor dropped out from under me. I stared at her, the words hitting like a truck. "You're lying," I breathed. "Oh, no," she smiled. "Your mother begged him to claim you. He refused. So she kept you hidden, raised you in shadows. But I always knew." I looked at Elena. She was sobbing now, trying to scream through her gag. "You tried to erase us," I said quietly. "Erase your shame. You made sure we stayed poor. Voiceless. But we rose anyway." She raised the gun. "And now, little sister, you fall." But before the shot rang out, the side wall of the warehouse exploded inward. Daniel burst through, armed, a tactical team behind him. Flashbangs erupted. Shouts. Chaos. I dove for Elena, pulling her out of the chair just as flames caught the edge of the gasoline ring. Daniel tackled Patience. The gun skidded across the floor. And then she laughed. A slow, eerie laugh as the flames licked closer. "You think this ends with me?" she screamed as they cuffed her. "There are more of us." We got Elena out just in time. The fire consumed the building behind us, turning Patience's secrets to ash. But not all of them. Because Daniel had been recording. Every word. Her confession, the blackmail, the twisted truth about our bloodline, all of it was captured. By morning, the entire country knew. The woman who tried to silence me was my half-sister. A billionaire heiress who built her life on lies. And I, the maid's daughter, the woman they tried to bury, had finally burned down their empire. 6 months later, Patience Simmons is in federal prison. The rest of the Simmons empire is under investigation. Over a dozen victims have come forward, backed by evidence. The courts are listening now. And me? I run my own foundation. The Elena Project. For women who've been silenced. Abused. Ignored. I speak in schools. On panels. In courtrooms. And sometimes, in silence. I think of my mother. Her hands, tired. Her heart, brave. She knew one day the truth would surface. And now, as I stand before thousands with a microphone in hand, I smile and whisper to her memory. I didn't just survive, Mama. I made them remember us.